Hello class and welcome to the Comp 101 review for midterm number 2. As was the case in exam 1, there's going to be 3 sections on your exam. So there's 30 points allocated for short answer, 30 points allocated for essay, and 40 points allocated for programming and problems. You can expect similar sorts of things on your short answer. However, for the essay and the problems and programming, you can expect them to focus more heavily on the coding than what you experienced on the first exam. So it may require you to enter additional pseudocode type solutions or additional flowcharting solutions, and it'll touch a little bit on JavaScript, but not a bunch, all right? Again, as with the first exam, the best way to prepare is to go back over all of the homework that you had weeks 6 through 9 to review the questions that were on there and the types of problems that you encountered. Those are exactly what you'll find on the exam. Another great review is to review the PowerPoints, which are available for download from each of the Meet sessions, and you can use those to help you review for the exam as well. All right. Now, while this exam covers topics weeks 6 through 9, it's going to be inclusive just in the fact that we can't not use variables that was introduced in the first 4 weeks, right? We can't not use those because programming builds upon itself. So some of the programming concepts from the first 4 weeks will again be used in this exam here. So I wouldn't say that it's comprehensive because we're not going to be focusing on the components of the computer and binary and decimal conversion type of things, but definitely the programming components will be carried throughout the entire course. All right, so as far as types of questions that you can expect on the exam, what's a dual alternative decision structure versus a single alternative decision structure? Like, what is that? You know, so those would be our if then else statements versus an if statement. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable, that you understand the concept of a single decision structure statement and a dual alternative decision structure statement, that you're able to write those in pseudocode, in JavaScript, in a flow chart, so that you're very comfortable with those structures. What is a case structure? You know, it's another way to determine decisions, but it's not in the same format as our if then else's. So what is a case structure and what does it do? While we were determining these structures up here, remember we have a condition that we supply to our structures. So, you know, if x is greater than 10 or y is less than 12 sort of thing. So you have those conditions, and in those conditions they all equate to a Boolean value of either true or false. But we can also combine conditions. So we can say if x is greater than 10 and y is less than 12. Or we could say if x is greater than 10 or y is less than 12. So we have these operators here, the and, the or, and the not. So you want to make sure that you know what does each of these operators do. You know, what happens if you have an and in there? What do both sides of the equation have to equate to, or an or? And then likewise, what does the not operator do? You know, what is the purpose of it? And make sure that you're able to give an example of all these situations. Now, if you were looking for something inside of a range, which operator are you going to use, the and or the or? What if you're looking for a number outside of a range? Which one should you use? And run through some examples. Like if you're not quite sure, put them down there and say, I'm looking for a number that falls in the range 0 to 10. So what if I give, you know, -3? How is that going to equate if I use an and? What if I use an or? What if I give it 20? And then what if you give it something in the middle? So you know, kind of run through different scenarios, kind of like I've done in class, to see what would happen. All right, indentation. Should you indent when you're writing an if statement or writing a loop? I mean, why do we want to indent? What is the purpose of the indentation? Is it required? Is it needed? Is it useful? So make sure you can identify that. All right, so recently we've been talking about loops, and in particular we've talked about pre-test loops and we've talked about post-test loops. Okay, and with a pre-test loop, as it kind of indicates pre, we're going to test our condition before executing the loop. It's done pre. Whereas in a post-test loop, we run our loop at least once and then we test our condition. So we test our condition after we've executed one time, so it's post. We've also discussed condition-controlled loops versus count-controlled loops. Okay. And in a condition control loop, all of them have a condition, but the condition is kind of unknown, like as long as this variable continues to be true or until the user enters a certain value, we're going to keep executing. Versus in your count controlled loop, we're going to execute for a specified number of times. All right, now in the count controlled loop, there's 3 actions that are going to happen using this counter variable. So what are those 3 actions that happen? Okay, there's something that needs to happen before you start executing the loop, there's something that happens in the condition of the loop, and there's something that happens in the body of the loop. So what are those 3 actions? All right, we have a loop here, a while loop. While counter equals 1, continue looping as long as counter is less than or equal to 10. We're going to display the value of our counter and then we're going to increment our counter. Okay, so draw out the flow chart. How would this look in a flow chart? And then we have our for loop. So we're saying go from counter equals 1 to 10. We're stepping by 1. If you don't specify the step here, the default is by 1. And we're displaying the value of our counter. So these 2 loops do exactly the same thing. Draw the flow chart down here for the count controlled loop or the for loop. Draw it for the while loop up here. And take a look at your 2 flow charts. Are they the same? Are they different? If they are the same, why? If they're different, why? So take a look at that. An accumulator variable. What is an accumulator variable? What do we use them for? What do we do with them? And why should that be initialized to 0 prior to executing a loop? Like, why can't it just be uninitialized? Or why can't it be left to the value it was before? Like, why do we need it to be 0? What about a sentinel value? What is a sentinel value and how is it used in conjunction with loops? And why is it important that we choose this value carefully? Like, why can't we just choose any old value? Why do we have to be really cognizant of what value we choose for that? How about a flag variable? What's a flag variable and what value does it contain? And what purpose does this flag variable serve? All right, so now here we have some sample problems. Design an if-then-else statement in pseudocode or an if-then statement. So this would be a single decision structure that assigns 25 to the value variable Q. So this is your body. We're assigning 25 to the variable Q and 35 to the variable R. So both of these would be in the body if, here comes your condition, if the variable S is greater than 45. Okay, so how would you design that? And now take your pseudocode and convert it into JavaScript. Okay. Here we have a case structure where we have a variable by the name of holiday. And we're going to test this variable holiday to see, is holiday equal to Christmas? The action we're going to take is to display Merry Christmas. If it's equal to New Year's, we're going to display Happy New Year's. So how would you write that case structure? And again, and this is pseudocode, now, how would you write that exact same thing in JavaScript? We want to define an if-then statement in pseudocode that sets the variable x equal to 45. So here's our action or our body of the statement when the flag variable with the name keep looping is set. And by is set, we mean it's equal to true. So if that's equal to true, then we want to take the action. So how would you write that in pseudocode? How would you write that in JavaScript? And it's really important that you pay attention to these. Flag variable, but the name of the variables keep looping. So you really want to pull out, carefully read the instructions to make sure you understand what the variables are called and what values they're supposed to be set equal to or compared to. And again, convert your solution above to JavaScript. Design a for loop in JavaScript that displays the following sets of numbers. So if you take a look at these, this is a for loop which is counting, and this is indeed counting, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 is just counting by 2. So how would you write your for loop to display numbers counting by 2? And again, take your pseudocode and convert it into JavaScript. Now here's another for loop that wants you to calculate the total, meaning you're going to be adding up all of these numbers, but you're going to be doing it in a for loop. And if we look, the numerator is 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on up through 20, which kind of looks like this, right? But the denominator is 10 or 100, 90, 80, 70, so it's counting, but it's counting down by 10. So how can you get your numerator to go up by 2 and your denominator to go down by 10, and then you need to add this all together to get a sum? So how would you write your loop to do that? And then again, convert your solution into JavaScript. Here's a sample for a for loop where you're converting this for loop. We have the for loop here, and you're going to convert it into a while loop, and then convert it into a do while loop. So you're taking this and converting it into these two other loops. And then again, take your pseudocode solutions above and to convert them into JavaScript. Now here we have a flowchart. It says evaluate code. If the code is equal to A, then set your discount equal to 0. If your code is equal to B, set it equal to 0.1, and so on. So taking a look at this flowchart, what value are you going to get out if the code is equal to A? What is discount going to be equal to? What if it's equal to B or C or Q or W? What would that be equal to? Okay. So you need to be able to read a flowchart, provide values to it, and determine what your output would be. Here we have some additional statements that you're going to be doing calculations. So assuming x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 5, what's going to be the result of this? And borrow back on your order of precedence. Make sure you're going parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, modulus, addition, and subtraction. Okay. And lastly, we have comparisons. So we have a value of x and a value of y, and you have a condition, and then you have an operator of either and or not, and then you have another condition. So would this equate to true, or would this equate to false? And we have 3 different situations here incorporating different operands. So what would each one of those equate to? Right? So these are the type of problems and type of questions you can expect to encounter on exam 2. And just as was the case in exam 1, if you want to complete this worksheet, which is available on the exam 2 tab in the course, you can download this as a Word document and complete this in preparation for your exam. And if you want to send it to me 2 to 3 days prior to when you're planning on taking your exam, then certainly feel free to do so, and I would be happy to go over this to let you know how you did. The other thing to be aware on the exam is it's very important that you contact your proctor at least 2 to 3 days prior to when you plan on taking your exam. Sometimes proctors take vacations, especially during the summer. They may take vacations. They may have a holiday during the course of a week. So it's a good idea to contact the proctor just to make sure that they're going to be available on the date and time that you plan on taking the exam. All right? So that you're not surprised. Okay? All right, so that's it for the exam 2 review, and I wish you guys all the best of luck. And if you have any questions over any of this material, please do not hesitate to send me an email.